Hello friends, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Brian, and today we're going to look at a few more stories from Reddit. If you enjoy Reddit stories, why not hit like, subscribe, and maybe even the notification bell. And now, let's move on to the first story of the day. With love, my friends. Here's the cast so you don't get lost. I'm married to Jasper, 21M, the second youngest in a boisterous flock of 6. His older brother Elias, 25M, moved out years ago, still close, still gaming with Jasper most nights, still the golden boy on speakerphone. About 3 years back, Elias brought home a girlfriend, Brielle. She'd moved to our state from across the country for love, which sounded romantic until the details started stacking up like dirty dishes. At first, Brielle was fine. Polite, a little too eager, the kind who compliments your couch while subtly testing the cushion seams. Then the seams started popping. She refused to work. Capitalism as a scam was her chorus, but expected Elias to bankroll not just her, but also her mom, Lenore, whom she flew in so she wouldn't be lonely. Lenore arrived with 3 suitcases and a list of dietary needs that somehow included weekly charcuterie boards. Brielle developed this habit of wandering into people's stuff. Like, literal rifling. She'd pick up a framed photo, squint, then ask why my hair looked so different now, as if the question were a compliment. She made these sly little comments about me being so lucky I had family support, as if luck were a personality flaw. And then there was the labor room thing. Picture me mid-contraction and Brielle leaning over, chirping, "If I ever have a girl, I'm going to use your baby's name, okay? You don't mind, right?" I didn't even have the breath to say no. She wore sweatpants to our wedding and fell asleep at the reception under an AC vent like a napping cat. It would be funny if it didn't live rent-free in my brain. Fast forward to this summer and their wedding plans. Location, Fernhaven, a 2-hour drive from our town. Theme, medieval. Like, full-on costumes, no modern shoes, and please try for natural hair if possible. Guests, yes, guests, were told to bring outdoor games, potluck dishes that feel period accurate, and plan to help stage the feasting hall at the barn venue. Last week Brielle added, breezy as a weather report, that they couldn't afford a photographer, so could we all take pictures on our phones and upload them to a shared album she'd curate? Oh, and Jasper is in the wedding party, even though we were informed there wouldn't be a rehearsal because we're keeping it organic. All of this might be quirky cute if they were, kinda people. But they'd blown off every family event for months, birthdays, a graduation, even Jasper's granddad's retirement dinner. Then came the group message laying out the medieval dress code, the potluck assignments, and the note that guests should arrive the day before to help with preparations. The day before just happens to be Piper's 15th birthday, Jasper's little sister, who had asked them ages ago not to schedule the wedding that weekend because she wanted the whole family around. They scheduled it anyway, then told us we should be in Fernhaven on her actual birthday to chop vegetables. I finally texted Brielle and said I was feeling overwhelmed and, hey, this is a lot to ask of guests. I said it gently. I said I wanted them to have the wedding they dreamed of, but that it was okay if some people couldn't do everything. She replied, if you don't like it, don't come. Simple. Then she ghosted me. An hour later my mother-in-law, Maris, called sounding rattled. Apparently Brielle had told her I was attacking her again and inventing stories about kicking them out of our house. We've never kicked anyone out. We've barely gotten them to come over. Now Elias is clipped in his texts, and Jasper's caught in the middle, trying to be a groomsman while I'm the villain in a group chat I can't see. The rest of the siblings? Secretly thrilled I said something. Publicly silent. Classic. I keep thinking I could handle the costumes, the potluck, the drive, all of it if we were talking about people who were gracious. But the math isn't mathing. I'm not their unpaid planner / photographer / caterer with a side quest of ruining Piper's birthday. And yet Jasper is standing in a linen tunic somewhere in my near future, and I can feel the storm forming over Fernhaven's cute little barn like a cloud that's already got my name in it. The morning after Brielle's if you don't like it, don't come text, I was still staring at my phone like it might apologize to me. Jasper noticed and asked, she said what? I read the message out loud, and he sighed that long, heavy sigh he does when he's caught between his family and his wife. I'll talk to Elias, he promised, though I could tell he already knew it wouldn't help. Here's the thing about Elias, he's loyal to a fault, especially when he's in love. When Brielle moved across the country, he defended her quirks as adjusting. When she stopped working, he framed it as taking time to find herself. When she dragged her mother to live with him, he told everyone it was just family first. Now, with wedding chaos looming, he seems trapped in the role of night protector of Brielle, even when she's torching every bridge around her. Meanwhile, Maris, my mother-in-law, called again to check on me. She whispered like we were in a spy movie because Brielle had apparently told Elias she felt unsafe around me. Unsafe. I once brought that woman an extra blanket when she said my living room was drafty. Maris assured me I wasn't crazy, that the rest of the family thought Brielle was off her rocker, but still, the word stuck. It's one thing to be disliked, it's another to be painted as the villain. The real kicker came 2 days later, a group message from Brielle herself, sent to all 6 siblings, dictating arrival times in Fernhaven. She wrote, "We need everyone in town Friday morning for setup. Please no excuses, it's about showing commitment." Friday morning. Piper's 15th birthday. I looked at Jasper, who looked at his phone, and we both thought the same thing. They're really going to bulldoze a kid's birthday to make people chop onions for their potluck wedding. Piper cried when she found out. Not a tantrum cry, but that quiet, shoulders-shaking kind of cry that makes you want to march into a barn and kick over hay bales. She had begged them months earlier not to do this, and they'd agreed or pretended to. Now, her family birthday was being stolen by lanterns and chicken legs. Jasper hugged her and promised we'd do something special anyway, but I could see the disappointment all over her face. That night, over takeout, Jasper admitted he felt torn. "I want to be there for Elias, but she's making it impossible." He rubbed his temples. "It's like every demand is a test, and if we fail, it proves we don't care." And it wasn't just us. I'd gotten texts from his other siblings, too. Serena was fuming over the costume prices, Theo was annoyed about taking time off work, and the twins, Ivy and Rowan, were already plotting to forget to bring their assigned dishes. Everyone was grumbling in private but too nervous to confront Brielle directly. I was the only one who had, and now I was the designated villain. At this point, I could feel the tension simmering towards something bigger. A wedding that already sounded like a LARP gone wrong was becoming a wedge in the family. And the worst part? We were still going. Jasper couldn't say no to his brother, not yet. Which meant I'd be driving 2 hours, in some makeshift gown, lugging potato salad, to watch the circus unfold in Fernhaven. And I had this gnawing feeling in my gut, if the planning was this chaotic, the wedding day itself was going to be something none of us would forget, for all the wrong reasons. Costumes, right. I told myself I'd get into the spirit, because fighting a theme is like fighting gravity, you just look sweaty and confused. I measured Jasper with a tape from the junk drawer and discovered he has heroic shoulders and zero patience. "Just buy whatever," he said, scrolling through a gamer forum while I googled affordable medieval tunic that won't ignite near candles. Everything that looked remotely decent cost as much as our electric bill. The cheap stuff looked like it would dissolve in dew. I called Serena to see what she was doing for a dress, and she answered from a thrift store, breathless, like a sports commentator. "I found a long green skirt and a lace curtain. I'm a lady of the manor/window treatment." That made me feel better. We decided our team vibe would be pleasant peasants, not screen-accurate nobles. I scored a linen-ish tablecloth that, with a belt, magically transformed into a sorta kinda gown. Piper helped me safety pin the back and then stared at herself in the mirror with my flower crown on. "I look like I collect taxes from butterflies," she said, smiling for the first time since the Friday edict. Jasper called Elias that night. I eavesdropped from the kitchen, pretending to decale the kettle. He started with, "Hey, man, proud of you, excited for the weekend," and then pivoted carefully into, "But we can't come up Friday morning. It's Piper's birthday." There was a long pause, a muffled something, and then Jasper said, "We'll drive up late Friday after her dinner. We'll be there early Saturday. I'll do whatever needs doing then." Another pause. Jasper's face tightened. "No, it's not about commitment. It's about being decent." He came back to the table, jaw set. "He says Brielle's stressed and needs everyone there. He said if we come late, were not prioritizing their marriage. He rubbed his forehead. I told him we're still coming. He repeated himself. Maris texted me a string of heart emojis and a photo of a bakery box. She'd ordered Piper a ridiculous galaxy cake with edible stars. If anyone touches my girl's birthday, she wrote, they answer to me. God, I love that woman. Then Brielle dropped a new grenade into the group chat, a spreadsheet of potluck assignments with required quantities. We were down 8 loaves of rustic bread, 2 vats of stew, and 1 fruit tart, Lattice preferred. I stared at the words vats of stew, like I'd accidentally enrolled in medieval culinary school. Theo replied with a single question mark. Ivy sent a gif of a raccoon dunking food in water like it's washing laundry. Brielle followed up with, please don't make this negative. We all agreed to support our day. I hadn't agreed to be a caterer, but okay. I typed, deleted, typed again, then landed on, we'll bring bread and fruit. We can't do stew with our schedule. Brielle immediately messaged me privately, it's always you. Always me? I counted to 10 before answering, we're driving up after Piper's birthday. We'll still be there, and we love Elias. But we have limits. She read it and didn't reply. The typing dots appeared and vanished, like a heartbeat monitor for an argument. I set my phone face down and told myself, again, that this was just a wedding. A weekend. A barn with lanterns. We could survive a theme and a few side eyes. We could carve out a corner of joy for Piper and still show up Saturday, bread in hand, smiling for photos we didn't want to take. But I also tucked a little notebook into my purse, logistics, boundaries, reminders to breathe. If this turned into a storm, I wanted something to hold on to besides safety pins and a tablecloth. The breaking point for me came during a phone call with Elena one evening. I was sitting on the couch folding laundry, and she rang me up, her voice dripping with passive aggression. So, she started, just making sure you and Daniel are on track with everything we need for the wedding. Costumes, food, helping us set up, photography, outdoor games, you know, the basics. I swear my jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd chip a tooth. The basics? Since when did the basics of attending a wedding include buying historically accurate clothing, catering, entertainment, and acting as the unpaid wedding photographer? It sounded less like a wedding and more like we'd been conned into staffing a medieval carnival. I tried to keep my tone neutral, even though my blood was boiling. Elena, don't you think this might be a lot to ask of your guests? Especially since not everyone can afford costumes or travel that far? Her reply was sharp enough to cut glass. If you don't like it, you don't have to come. And just like that, she hung up. No discussion, no acknowledgement, no compromise. Just a take it or leave it dismissal, like I was some stranger off the street instead of her fiancé's brother's wife. When I told Daniel what happened, he just sat there, shoulders slumped, staring at the floor. She's twisting everything again. She's already told Mom I've been distant and that you're making her feel unwelcome in the family. That hit me like a gut punch. Elena wasn't just pulling the poor me act with us, she was rewriting the entire narrative to make it sound like we were the villains. And the worst part? It was working. At least, with some people. Word got back to us that Elena was whispering half-truths to other relatives, spinning stories about how we supposedly kicked her and Marcus out of our house, which was a complete fabrication. We'd only ever hosted them once, and she left early, complaining the whole time. I wanted to scream, to throw my hands up and just refuse to deal with it all, but Daniel begged me to stay calm. She's got Marcus wrapped around her finger, he said quietly. If I push too hard, I'll lose him. And I don't want to lose my brother. That broke my heart because I could see the truth in it. Marcus, who used to be funny, laid back, and always joking around, now seemed permanently on edge. Whenever we saw him, his eyes darted nervously between us and Elena, like he was checking to make sure his words wouldn't set her off. And then, like salt in the wound, Elena dropped another bomb. She announced that everyone had to come into town the day before the wedding, which just happened to be Daniel's little sister's birthday. His sister, Mia, had specifically asked months earlier for them not to schedule the wedding that weekend because she wanted the whole family around for her birthday. Elena didn't care. You'll just have to celebrate another time, she said, as if a 15-year-old's birthday was some disposable afterthought compared to her vision. Oh, and while we were there early? We'd all be expected to chop vegetables, haul chairs, and prep food for her big day. I stared at Daniel in disbelief after he relayed that conversation. She really said that? Word for word, he muttered, rubbing his temples like the stress was physically crushing him. I wanted to throw something. It was one thing to make wild demands of adults who could, barely, roll with it, but deliberately scheduling over a kid's birthday after being asked not to was cruel. Mia had been counting down to her sweet 15 for months, and now she was supposed to smile through it while everyone drove off to play chef and decorator for Elena's fantasy wedding? It was becoming clearer by the day, this wasn't just a quirky, demanding bride situation. This was Elena's way of asserting dominance, like she wanted to remind the entire family that she was in control now. And the saddest part? It was working. By the week before the wedding, our group chat looked less like a place for excited family banter and more like a hostage negotiation transcript. Elena would post long bullet-pointed lists of what still needed doing, followed by passive-aggressive reminders like, "Please don't make me feel unsupported on my special day." And then, silence, because no one knew how to reply without igniting her. Ivy and Rowan, the twins, texted me privately, "We're not bringing stew. Just not happening." They planned to show up with bags of chips and a fruit tray, claiming they ran out of time. Honestly? I respected it. But they were also banking on me being the one Elena would focus her wrath on, since I'd already played that role. Meanwhile, poor Mia's birthday plans kept shrinking like a deflating balloon. She originally wanted a dinner out with the whole family, but Maris suggested we do cake at home instead, since half the siblings were now being guilt-tripped into arriving in Fernhaven Friday afternoon. I could see the heartbreak in her eyes when she tried to smile and say, "That's okay, birthdays aren't a big deal." She was 15. Birthdays were still a big deal. The only silver lining was Maris herself. That woman was quietly furious on behalf of her daughter and her family, though she played polite when Elena was around. She told me, "Don't you worry, honey, Mia will have her moment. I've got plans." And the way she said it made me think she had an entire rebellion cooking behind the scenes. Still, Daniel was caught in the middle. He stayed up late one night, scrolling through Etsy looking at medieval tunics, sighing every few minutes like he was auditioning for the role of world's most exhausted groomsman. Finally, he closed his laptop and muttered, "It's not about the wedding. It's about Brielle, sorry, Elena, showing she can make us jump." And he wasn't wrong. The day before, just to twist the knife deeper, Elena announced a new wedding duty. Since she still hadn't booked a DJ, she asked each sibling to curate a playlist of Renaissance-style songs or songs with a mystical vibe. No joke. She wanted 45 guests to each bring their own medieval mixtape. When Serena texted her, "Can we just bring a speaker and play Spotify?" Elena shot back, "If you can't make the effort, please don't ruin the aesthetic." I almost threw my phone across the room. I was picturing a muddy barn, bugs flying everywhere, people in Amazon-bought capes fumbling with Bluetooth connections, and Elena floating around in a thrift store gown demanding we stay in character. But no matter how absurd it got, Daniel stayed locked in on one thing, Elias. "He needs me there," he kept saying. "Even if it's a disaster, he needs me standing next to him." I got it. I really did. Brothers don't get married every day, and Daniel wasn't about to abandon him, even if it meant kneeling at the throne of Queen Elena the Petty. So we made our plan: celebrate Mia's birthday properly at home, pile into the car late Friday, drive the 2 hours to Fernhaven, and brace ourselves for whatever waited at that barn. I packed bread and fruit, as promised, shoved my linen tablecloth dress into a garment bag, and kissed Mia's forehead, promising her that Saturday would not erase her Friday. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't going to be just another awkward family wedding. Something was about to go off the rails in Fernhaven. And honestly, I was already rehearsing how I'd tell this story later because it was shaping up to be less happily ever after and more Lord of the Flies, but with floral arrangements. Friday started out the way you'd expect for a 15-year-old's birthday: balloons taped to the door, a galaxy cake on the counter, Maris bustling around humming. For a few hours, it felt like a normal family celebration. Mia lit up opening her new headphones and actually laughed when the twins handed her a card stuffed with $15 in crumpled bills, one from each of them, labeled Tribute for the Queen. But the whole time, there was a countdown hanging over us. We had 2 hours of highway between us and Fernhaven, and Elena had texted twice already that morning, "Don't forget set up tonight. Can't wait to see everyone's costumes." Like we were soldiers about to report for duty. After dinner, we loaded the car. The bread loaves were in the back seat, wrapped in foil, along with my fruit tart, which, let's be real, looked more like a pie that lost a fight. My dress was crammed in a garment bag that wouldn't zip. Daniel's tunic was folded on top of a duffel. The drive was quiet. Neither of us wanted to admit how much dread was building. We rolled into Fernhaven just before 10. The GPS led us down a gravel road to the barn venue, where cars were already clustered like a makeshift campground. Lanterns flickered outside. The place looked more like a Renaissance fair that forgot to hire staff. People milled around holding folding chairs and Tupperware. We barely got out of the car before Elias rushed up, face tight. "Where have you been? We were going over everything an hour ago, and you weren't here." Daniel blinked at him. There wasn't supposed to be a rehearsal. "Well, there was," Elias snapped, then softened like he remembered who he was talking to. "We needed everyone to practice walking in." Elena's stressed. I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. Daniel just nodded, slung an arm around his brother's shoulder, and let himself get pulled toward the barn. I carried the bread inside, where a swarm of mismatched cousins and friends were shuffling folding tables. Elena spotted me immediately, in yoga pants and a hoodie, and pursed her lips like I'd shown up naked. "You didn't dress up?" she asked. "It's 10 at night. I thought I'd change tomorrow." She didn't answer, just flitted away in a cloud of chiffon like an irritated ghost. Inside, the barn smelled like damp hay and citronella candles. Bugs swarmed near the lights. A single long banquet table stood in the center, already covered in random dishes, crockpots, casseroles, pies. No decorations yet, no music, no clear plan. Just chaos. By midnight, Daniel finally resurfaced, exhausted, saying they'd been walked through their entrances 3 times while Elena barked orders. She kept changing her mind about which side people should stand on, he muttered. It was like a middle school play rehearsal. We ended up crashing on an air mattress in a cousin's living room, surrounded by piles of costumes. The air was thick with bug spray and tension. I lay there in the dark, listening to Daniel breathe beside me, and thought, if this is how the night before is going, tomorrow is going to be an absolute circus. And deep down, a part of me was almost curious. Because there's bad weddings, and then there's the kind of disaster you tell stories about for years. I had the creeping suspicion we were about to witness the latter. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to the sound of someone clanging pots in the kitchen and a voice yelling, "Does anyone have more garlic?" It wasn't even 8 a.m. I sat up, groggy, and realized Elena had already mobilized a small army of relatives to start cooking for 40-plus guests. Cousins were chopping vegetables, someone was stirring a pot of something murky, and a poor uncle was sweating over a grill he clearly hadn't volunteered for. Daniel was already gone and dragged off to the barn with the other groomsmen to help decorate. Which, apparently, meant dragging hay bales into a circle and stringing up lanterns that kept flickering out. I joined the kitchen crew, plopping down my bread and fruit tart with a sense of defeat. A middle-aged aunt gave me a sympathetic look and whispered, "Don't take it personally, sweetie. Elena thinks we're all her staff." By noon, the vibe was chaos squared. It had rained all morning, so the outdoor games were soggy and the barn smelled like wet wood. Guests started arriving early, confused about whether to sit down, mingle, or start prepping food. Elena swept around in her dress, cream-colored, vaguely medieval, with a corset that didn't quite fit, snapping at people to stay in character. One cousin laughed nervously and said, "My lord," to another, and Elena barked, "Not funny." The ceremony was supposed to start at 2. At 1:55, Daniel was still missing. Turns out Elias had decided, without telling anyone, that there would be a last-minute rehearsal that morning. So Daniel spent hours being repositioned like a chess piece until Elias finally declared it perfect. When he finally reappeared, he muttered under his breath, "This is not a wedding. This is hostage improv theater." The ceremony itself, okay, it wasn't terrible. It was weird, sure, everyone in thrift store tunics and dollar store crowns, but vows were said, rings were exchanged, and nobody tripped. The photographer they'd mysteriously hired last minute was intense, darting around with her camera, yelling, "Look at me," at random intervals. But the reception? That's when the wheels came flying off. Picture this: 45 people crammed into a damp barn with one banquet table, 0 chairs, and flies buzzing like they paid admission. Food was still being cooked 2 hours after the ceremony. At one point, someone whispered that the bride's mom's boyfriend, who had been tasked with handling most of the meal, had a heart attack and been rushed to the hospital. Total panic. Plates half filled. Guests murmuring about leaving. Except an hour later, we learned he hadn't had a heart attack at all. He'd faked it. Apparently, he was known for doing this kind of stunt to get out of obligations, and Elena's mom had covered for him. Which meant there was no backup food plan. Cue the bride and groom themselves, still in costume, frantically cooking stew for everyone while guests awkwardly stood around holding paper plates. At some point, they cut the cake without announcing it. The photographer sprinted across the barn mid-bite to catch the photo, nearly tripping over a hay bale. By the time I realized what was happening, Daniel was shoving a forkful of cake in my hand like we were sneaking contraband. Then, the strangest thing of all, after the cake was served, Elena's entire family disappeared. Like, vanished. One by one, they slipped out of the barn until only her mother remained, ducking in every half hour to smoke a cigarette. No bouquet toss, no dancing, no music, just a group of confused guests shuffling around with bug spray and paper cups of lukewarm stew. I remember standing in that barn, swatting mosquitoes, watching Elena pout in the corner while Elias tried to play host, and thinking, this is it. This is the kind of story you tell for the rest of your life. And the worst part? We weren't even halfway through the night. If you've ever been to a reception that fizzled instead of flowed, multiply that by 10 and you'll have a sense of what we endured in Fernhaven. After the cake fiasco and the mysterious vanishing of the bride's family, the energy in the barn dropped like a stone. People stood in little clusters, whispering about the fake heart attack, while mosquitoes buzzed around the citronella candles that were clearly losing the battle. Daniel found me leaning against a wall, trying to discreetly Google how long to politely stay at a wedding reception. He whispered, "Elias wants us to stick it out a little longer. He's worried people will leave too soon and Elena will freak." Spoiler, Elena was already freaking. She kept pacing the barn, tugging at her too-tight corset, muttering about unsupportive energy. At one point, she actually asked Daniel to rally the guests into merrymaking, as if he was the town crier. He looked at her, deadpan, and said, "What do you want me to do, start a joust?" Her glare could have melted steel. Meanwhile, the food situation was deteriorating. The vats of stew turned out to be 2 crockpots, both nearly empty by the time latecomers lined up. The bread I brought was hacked apart with a butter knife until it resembled damp bricks. My fruit tart sat untouched on the end of the table until a toddler stuck both hands into it, and honestly, that kid did me a favor. Around 8 p.m., the real drama erupted. Elena's mother stormed back into the barn, cigarette dangling, and started yelling at Elias. Loudly. In front of everyone. "No one's talking to me. I've been abandoned on my daughter's wedding day," she wailed, though the only thing she'd done for the last 3 hours was vanish into her cabin between smokes. Elias tried to calm her down, but Elena joined in, shrieking that the family wasn't giving her mother the attention she deserved. Guests exchanged wide-eyed looks while trying not to choke on stew. One brave aunt finally muttered, "Maybe if she stayed in here longer than 5 minutes at a time," which only set Elena off more. At that point, Serena grabbed my arm and hissed, "We have to go before someone throws a lantern." But Daniel shook his head. He was committed to writing it out for his brother, no matter how insane it got. So we stayed. The night dragged on with no music, no dancing, no plan. Just clusters of people awkwardly holding cups of watered-down lemonade, waiting for some sign it was over. The bugs were relentless. My dress smelled like mildew. And the bride kept drifting from guest to guest, sighing loudly, as if daring someone to compliment her vision. Finally, around 10, Elias raised a glass and thanked everyone for coming. It wasn't a formal toast, more like a white flag. People seized the moment, rushing to pack up dishes and escape into the night. By the time we left, the barn looked like the aftermath of a failed festival, paper plates scattered, candles guttering, and Elena sulking alone at the head table while her mother chain-smoked outside. In the car, Daniel exhaled so hard it fogged the windshield. That was something. I couldn't help it, I started laughing. Not out of joy, but because if I didn't, I was going to scream. We survived the Renaissance apocalypse, I said. But as we drove away from the flickering lanterns of Fernhaven, I knew the story wasn't over. Families like ours don't let drama die quietly. And with Elena now officially tethered to us by marriage, this circus was only just beginning. The morning after, our phones were blowing up. Group texts, missed calls, cryptic Facebook posts, it felt like the aftermath of a natural disaster where everyone checks in to confirm they're alive. Except in this case, the disaster was Elena's wedding, and the casualties were dignity, food safety, and whatever remained of our patients. By breakfast, the story of the fake heart attack had spread like wildfire. Someone's cousin had overheard the bride's mom laughing on the phone about how her boyfriend couldn't handle cooking for that many people, so he pulled his classic stunt and pretended to keel over. Apparently, he'd done it before to get out of yard work. This time, the ambulance-free emergency was just a convenient way to avoid feeding 45 people. Maris, bless her, was livid. So a grown man faked a medical crisis so he wouldn't have to boil potatoes? And his girlfriend covered for him on her daughter's wedding day? She shook her head, muttering about lunatics running the asylum. And as if that weren't enough, we found out the bride's mother hadn't taken a single photo herself. Not one. Instead, she waited until Maris and the siblings uploaded their pictures to Facebook, then reposted them as if they were hers, complete with captions like, "So proud of my baby girl's magical day." As if she hadn't spent most of it outside chain-smoking and yelling. Elias, poor guy, looked hollow when we saw him. He admitted he hadn't known about the fake heart attack until guests started whispering about it at the reception. When he confronted his new mother-in-law afterward, she turned it around on him, saying he should have protected her from judgment. Daniel tried to cheer him up, but even he was struggling. "Man, it's like you married into a traveling circus," he muttered on the drive home. Elias didn't even laugh. Meanwhile, Elena was on a mission to control the narrative. By Sunday afternoon, she had posted a long, rambling status about how true love conquers negativity and how unsupportive family members tried to overshadow the joy. That last part stung because we knew exactly who she meant. My phone lit up with screenshots from the siblings, each one captioned with some version of "Is she serious?" And still. Daniel held the line. I can't abandon him. He chose her, and if I walk away now, he loses both of us. He was right, but God, it was exhausting. That night, Piper came to sit by me on the couch. She was scrolling through the wedding photos, mostly blurry shots of damp costumes and bug-bitten guests. "You know what?" she said quietly. "My birthday cake was the best part of the weekend." I hugged her and thought, same, kid. Same. But in my head, I also knew this wasn't the end. Elena wasn't just a bridezilla, she was a long-term storm system. And now she was officially family. The week after the wedding felt like the comedown after a storm, quiet, but with debris everywhere. Group chats slowed to a crawl, like everyone needed time to recover. No one wanted to poke the bear that was Elena, and Elias was basically in damage control mode, sending short, strained messages about "thanks again for coming" and "Elena's just decompressing." But little by little, stories trickled out. A cousin admitted he'd left the reception early to grab fast food because he couldn't stomach another spoonful of stew. One of the uncles joked he'd rather have gone to Piper's birthday than LARP with mosquitoes. Even Maris, usually the peacemaker, let slip at Sunday dinner, "If she thinks that was magical, then I dread to see her idea of a disaster." And yet, everyone still tried to paper it over. No one wanted to officially brand Elena as the family villain, even though she'd practically auditioned for the role. That's the thing about big families, you keep trying, even when it's messy, even when it's obvious that someone is dead set on stirring chaos. For me, the hardest part was untangling my own feelings. On the one hand, I was furious she'd dismissed Piper's birthday, furious she'd lied to Maris, furious she'd turned what should have been a celebration into a stress test. But on the other hand, I felt this heavy pity for Elias. He looked like a man constantly smoothing water with his hands, desperate to keep everything calm while standing in a storm he chose. Daniel, for his part, decided the only path forward was what he called strategic distance. Be polite. Be present when Elias truly needed him. But stop jumping through hoops. If she wants knights and dragons, let her hire them, he muttered, shoving his wrinkled tunic into the back of our closet. And me? I decided I wasn't going to be her unpaid planner, caterer, or photographer ever again. I'd show up when family called, I'd bring a dish if asked, but I wasn't going to let myself get bulldozed into treating someone else's wedding, or birthday, or graduation, or any event as a stage for Elena's endless drama. The last laugh, though, came from Piper. A week later, she posted a photo of her galaxy cake with the caption, "Best day ever. Way better than the medieval stew." Half the family liked it. A few even commented with sword emojis. And maybe that's the lesson buried in this whole mess. Sometimes the drama queen gets the spotlight, but the real joy shows up in the quiet corners, like a 15-year-old eating cake, surrounded by people who actually make her feel loved. So no, I don't regret speaking up to Elena. I don't regret drawing a line. Because if surviving that barnyard circus taught me anything, it's that there's a difference between supporting family and being exploited by them. And I know where my boundaries are now. We left Fernhaven with bug bites, wrinkled costumes, and enough gossip to last a decade. And honestly? If Elena wanted her wedding to be unforgettable, well, mission accomplished.